here.
Glad to meet you.
Yeah, Bob Nast is here. I don't know where he went,
so
though.
second week of July through the month, so yeah, that last 3 quarters.
Yeah. It's the other button. It's the other button. There you go.
Thank you. I don't know. How far? Do you know where Bob went? Do you know where Bob went? Bob Nast?
Guessing the rest.
Oh, well, we could start then without him. All right. It's 4:01. The meeting is open. At this point, call to order.
Member Burke?
Here.
Member Fig?
Here.
Member
Yes.
Nast? Ex officio member Nordahl?
Just in time.
Vice Chair Schnapp?
Here.
Chair Spiegel?
Here, one moment, please. Where's the gen? Okay. Please stand for the pledge.
There's no pledge at this meeting.
Oh, you don't pledge? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, with the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This one.
Okay, anyways. The agenda, I move to approve. Anybody have a reason not to?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? You have 5-0, miss. Okay, the consent items. Anybody want to take something out?
I'll move to approve the consent items.
I'll second.
Second. Third.
Fourth.
Fourth.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? 5-0. Okay, on our business items, we're moving, where are we moving? We're moving the last item, which is an open forum. We're moving that to come before A. And we have Ryan Fleming, who's going to be telling us about good things.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Ryan Fleming from Assemblymember Jackie Irwin's office. I know I've met some of you, but nice to meet the rest of you. Yeah, so Mr. Hensley had wanted me to come talk about, to briefly mention how Assemblymember Irwin secured $9.5 million in the California budget for Oxnard's wastewater treatment plant. So Assemblymember Irwin has a really good relationship with the governor and was looking at the budget, and there was some movement with some funds. She was like, you know what, I know that Oxnard is in, and Port Hueneme areas are in need of some funding. So went, talked to them and was like, hey, what do you need? And after looking at all of their different projects, she determined that this was where the funding would be most useful. And that's because the Oxnard's capital improvement projects proposal stated that 40% of the facility is in poor or very poor condition, with 72% of it at a moderate, high, or very high risk of failing, and obviously not very good and is impactful to both your community and the city of Oxnard. And with the failure of the Oxnard wastewater treatment plant being dangerous for public health and the potential to cause some severe damage to the environment, she determined it was vital to take care of this now. Especially with the city of Oxnard waiting for funding through the State Water Clean Revolving Program. They're still up in that process and waiting for the funding, but that would take at least a year, if not more, which would be too long to wait. So she spoke with the governor, carved out extra 9.5 million from that to go specifically towards this project. And it is officially in the budget. The full budget has not been decided upon. This has, though, and the full budget should be approved by the end of the month and signed by the governor.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Is there any specific amount of time that Oxnard has to spend those funds? Does it have to be within the next budget year, or is it something that could be carried over if necessary?
Yeah, I think this 9.5 million will need to be spent within the budget year, but if they get the funding through the State Water Clean Revolving Program, I think that would be able to carry beyond that.
Very good.
One question. In my mind, the wastewater plant is, in round numbers, $180 million item. So 9.5 could be buying the design, or do you know exactly what that will buy?
I think the focus is to upgrade the things that are in danger of failing.
Specific items.
Yeah, it's specific items. And then also right now, I don't know if any of you have been, but right now there is a single person who has to man everything just in case something happens, because it's a constant worry that they have. And this would hopefully bring everything for the time being up to code so that there's no health worries within the next couple years. I still think it's important for them to apply through the State Water Clean Revolving Program to get those funds to bring it up to that level, as you said. But right now, this should take care of the major pressing problems.
Director Nordahl, can I add one more comment on that? Myself, along with Pete Martinez and Fred Camarillo, we regularly go to the Oxnard wastewater plant improvement meetings, and the most pressing item that I think Ryan was referring to is the electrical building, and that alone is about a $65 million price tag. So if the question is, can this $9.5 million be spent in the time allotted, the answer is yes.
Are you wishing for an answer?
Was there any mention of any
No.
more money coming down the pipe?
Not specifically from the state budget, because this is the operating budget for the entire state that's passed by the legislature. There are potential grant and external funding opportunities as well, such as like the State Water Clean Revolving Program, but this is the only money being pulled specifically from there. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I
Thank you very much.
appreciate your time.
Okay, going to A, our brackish water reclamation with Don.
Good afternoon. This is the monthly report for the reclamation facility. It's recommended that the board receive and file this, and this report presents the update of the operational status for the month from May 1st to May 31st. And during this period, the PHWA water, Port Hueneme Water Agency demand averaged 3.4 million gallons per day, which was higher than the previous monthly report. The facility was operated in membrane production, with United Water Conservation District supplying 81.5% and Cayugas Water District 18.5% of the demand during this period. The report stands corrected where it says there were no interruptions of service. There were 2 days where the silt density index exceeded 3. So we were actually down 2 days with membrane operation. We came back up, and the silt density index is below 3. In fact, I believe it's 2.4 right now. So we're operating membranes right now. So there was a 2-day disruption on that. There are no, and we continue to meet all state and federal regulatory standards. There again, it says the silt index was taken twice a day, and it was 1.3, with a maximum level. The threshold for a membrane operation is 3, and United well water quality operations has allowed us to continue in membrane production. United Water, our emergency, we were allocated 3,470 acre feet a year, and our current usage is, to the year is 1,368. The state water project allocation is 80%, and which is 1,850 acre feet per year. And the Metropolitan Water District declared a water supply condition 2. I think this is basically the same as last month. Nothing has changed. Just our water usage has gone up slightly, and we had the 2 days where we could not run membranes on there. And just, for information, right now at our current usage of 3.4 million gallons per day, that's exceeded last month, and if you extrapolate that out on 365 days a year, we'd be slightly over our allocation from between United and Cayugas. So, but the previous month, we were below what would have been our allocation. So it's been averaging out, but I just wanted to bring that up. We use, 3.4 million gallons per day is approximately 10.2 acre feet per day. Just to give you a perception of what we're using and how it equals out to acre feet. Are there any questions?
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alacon on B.
Yes, thank you, Chair Spiegel and members of the board. If you recall at our last meeting, we had an update on the Fox Canyon GMA, the development of the groundwater sustainability plan, and we showed you the outline of the M&I proposal. This is the proposal that us, along with several other members of the M&I group, consisting of the City of Oxnard, Camarosa Water District, City of Camarillo, City of Ventura, have all been working on for some time. At last month's meeting, I only provided you an outline, which is what we had available at the time. However, attached to this staff report is the full outline, located on page 14 of your packet. And of all the clauses included in this proposal, there's one that I want to point your attention to because it will be maybe the most important point that will kind of pop up from time to time, and that is Section 1F, which is on page 15 of your packet. And I'll give you a second just to flip to that page, but I'm going to read it out loud. It says, "It is proposed that groundwater allocations be assigned to M&I retail water service providers, not wholesale water service providers, such that each M&I retail water service provider is the allocation holder of record." And let me explain why this is important. When the coastal communities, the Beach District, City of Port Hueneme, City of Oxnard, gave up their pumping operations and let United pump in on their behalf, that and we receive our water via the OH pipeline. The OH pipeline agreement stated that United will pump and hold that allocation in trust of the OH contractors, namely us. In the M&I proposal, what we're planning to include in this clause F here that you're reading on the page is having the GMA come out and explicitly state that the allocation belongs to the OH contractors. And Director Nordahl, that includes the Navy as well, excuse me. And that's important because United has not come out so explicitly and said that that allocation does not belong to them. And that's important that all parties agree that the allocation belongs to the OH contractors and not to United. This isn't universally agreed upon right now. We need to have that discussion with United in the coming months, and I know that Mr. Villafana and myself and Mr. Green will be meeting with United probably next month or sometime during the summer, tentatively for July 9th. The rest of this proposal is universally agreed upon amongst the M&I community. It's really just this one sticking point that we need to kind of hash out. So we'll report an update when we have more information and more development on that single clause. And in a broader sense, both the Ag team and the M&I team continue to meet to see if they can reach an agreement that the GMA can also approve and include in the GSP. And if there are any questions on the GSP development, I can answer those now.
I have a question.
Yeah, so that's great news that it would be included, this item 1F. Are there any others that stand in the same boat like we do to effectively, like, say this is really important for them as well?
Yeah, pretty much anyone who receives water off of the OH pipeline. That includes the city of Oxnard. They're in the same boat. There are some minor recipients off the OH pipeline. El Rio School District, I believe, is one of them. There's a couple small ag farmers off the OH pipeline, but they don't quite receive the volume of water that we take. Between the city of Oxnard and PHWA members, we take about 85 or 86% of all deliveries off the OH. And then this clause goes beyond just OH contractors as well. It actually has some implications for the city of Camarillo and Camarosa Water District. There's a broader scope at play here beyond just the OH pipeline, but this is something that we do need to figure out with United.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, at that point, the next section, C, the update on the water legislation.
We have a PowerPoint set up for this one. Thank you, Chair Spiegel. So at our last meeting, I'd asked that we agendize this because Director Berg, Director Nass, and myself attended the AWA breakfast sometime in the middle of May, and there was a host of legislative items that were brought up that I felt that this board would be interested in seeing. So we're going to go over 5 different pieces of legislation. Some of them are initiatives that are on the ballot. Some of them are making their way through the state legislature right now, and some are going to be on the November ballot. So it's all across the spectrum here. The first one is one that has already been adopted and approved by and signed by the governor. This was signed on May 31st, 2018. So what we can do about it at this point is kind of gone by the wayside, but I think it's important we understand what was included in the text of that bill. What it did is it established a water budget for every California water agency. And what a water budget is a customized amount of water for every single agency in California. And it's to make sure that every agency stays efficient for the amount of people that they serve and for the amount of area, irrigable area that they irrigate. So regarding indoor usage, it says that indoor water usage must be 50 gallons per person per day starting in 2030. And then to determine the outdoor usage, what's efficient for outdoor usage, they're actually going to do a flyover, an aerial, to determine what the landscape irrigable area you have in your service area is. And then they'll combine those two together and they'll say, you know, City of Port Hueneme, you get X amount of acre feet per year. Beach District, you get X amount of acre feet per year. And you got to stay within that allocation, or else there's some penalties associated with going over. This second part, or second bullet down below, I think is important because maybe you've seen some misinformation out there. The one that I've heard is, if I shower and do laundry on the same day, I'm going to be fined $1,000. And if you ever hear that in the grocery store or wherever you go, turn around and let the person know that's not the case. These fines of $1,000 are for the agency, not for individual households. Yes, you can still do laundry and you can shower on the same day. I encourage it. And then the other point that's helpful for us as member agencies is, just because the state is making each agency follow a water budget, we do not need to pass on a water budget rate structure to our customers. That's an important distinction. We can follow whatever rate structure that we want to do. So whether we want to do a uniform rate, whether we want to do an inclining tier structure rate. Heck, if we want to go to a water budget, which Las Virgenes has, all those options are still there. The state is not dictating what kind of rate structure that we all move to. So following that same framework, 50 gallons per capita per day by 2030. So you take, just do the math, 50 gallons, multiply that, say, by a family of 4, that's 200 gallons a day, right? Easy math. Now, if we take that 200 gallons a day, I'm going to follow the last line in that table there, follow along with me, which is the year 2030. 50 gallons per capita per day. Over the course of a day, amongst those 4 people, that's 200 gallons, right? Multiply that by just over 30, 30.4 to be exact, which is the average number of days in a month. That's 6,000 gallons. And then if you divide that by 748, which is how many gallons are in a unit, that means that that household of 4 will get 8.1 units. Does everyone follow the math there? Okay. Where we are at today is 8.9. So as ambitious as this piece of legislation may seem, it's not crazy. It just requires Californians to kind of tighten their belts already more than they already have, which you might say the low-hanging fruit is already there, and the last 0.8 could be a little painful. So this remains to be seen whether Californians are up to the task. But suffice it to say, this one has already been decided for us. The second part of that, I mentioned the indoor usage. The outdoor usage, like I said earlier, it takes a look at how much irrigable area that you have, how much landscaping you have, how much, the temperature outside, the sun, this is your evapotranspiration. It takes all that into consideration when determining what your efficiency rating is for your irrigable area. Again, I'm not prognosticating here on how detailed the state legislature is going to get, but this could very well be the way they end up determining what's efficient and what's not. So I'll move on to Prop 68. Again, this one was also already decided for us, but instead by the state legislature, this one was decided by the voters just a couple weeks ago on the June 5th ballot. This was passed by 56% of the voters. It approved $4.1 billion in general obligation bonds to improve state and local parks. The naming of this prop was a little suspect, in my opinion. Parks, environment, and water. Water, yes, was part of it, but parks kind of was the main the main purpose behind this bond. The chart on the right there shows you where the money is going, and you see water down there at 1.2 billion of the 4.1, and this is for water. Mostly at or near park sites. So you say flood protection. Well, flood protection of where? It's flood protection of state and local park sites. Moving right along to SB 623. This was probably the most hotly discussed item over the past session. Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund, aka the water tax. This would have added 95 cents per month to every residential bill. And staff's recommendation here is to oppose this piece of legislation, and I'd like to discuss why. Although not anyone here would disagree with the mission of what this bill is trying to accomplish, and that is to fund water treatment facilities in disadvantaged communities throughout the state. Most of those places, in fact all of them, are out of Ventura County, so we would be exporting dollars away from Ventura County ratepayers to other parts of the state. Most of these areas are located in the Central Valley. If passed, it would have generated $140 million. However, what happened in the last few weeks is that legislators reached a compromise so they could avoid a vote on this particular bill. And they included, I believe, $24 million for this upcoming budget to address this issue. Despite this bill kind of being tabled for now, Governor Brown has signaled he's likely to bring this up again before he's out of office. So we can expect this to kind of rear its head. ACWA, that's the Association of California Water Agencies, is still asking that agencies submit letters of opposition if they do in fact disagree with the language of this bill, which we recommend doing still. This will resurface, and if we have a letter ready, I think it's prudent that we send one off. Philosophically, I think it's a slippery slope when water agencies are being asked to be tax custodians on behalf of the state. Counties generally are set up for that sort of function much more readily than a water agency. And the Pandora's box that might open when you start attaching taxes on your utility bill could very well, it could lead to more, and that's kind of the scary part of this bill. Aqua was very, very, they're very responsive to providing print collateral on websites, and they were on top of this issue like a hawk. So they made sure to get the word out about how to better address these issues, and a water tax was not the way that they wanted to go about it. Moving right along to SB 998. This is discontinuation of water service. What this bill would do is create a uniform rule for how each water agency goes about shutting off service for their ratepayers. One of the things that I think water agencies like is local control. What this bill seeks to do is to remove that local control and put it in the state's hands to tell you how to go about developing a policy for how to discontinue service. So what it would require of local agencies is to set up a system where you can defer payments, come up with alternate payment schedules, an appeals process. You could not pay a bill and drag that out for 90 days, all while still incurring new bills each and every month. In practice, you could drag a bill out. Once it was delinquent after 30 days, you could drag it out another 90 days. So theoretically, it could be 120 days late. What this does, it also asks the water agency to determine, is that customer facing a hardship? Are they a protected class? Are they, are they disabled in any way? Are they a senior on a fixed income? Water agencies are generally not in a position to make a determination of whether a customer fits into one of these protected classes. It puts us in a kind of a tight spot on how we go about discontinuing water service. I'll speak on behalf of the Beach District at this point. We allow a good amount of flexibility for our customers, much the same that I feel probably the city of Port Hueneme does, and it seems to be working well. We know who our usual suspects are. We know them by name a lot of times, and we do give them grace periods here and there, and there seems to be kind of a trusting relationship there. I would not be happy with someone from Sacramento telling us how to go about exactly how to discontinue service. Lastly, there's the 2018 water bond. This is going to be on the November ballot. Every registered voter will have a chance to render their opinion on it. This is the 22nd water bond since 1960. And this is generally how California funds water improvements. In fact, the very first one of these in 1960 was to fund the State Water Project. What this bill will do is provide $8.7 billion in funding for various water-related projects. Of that 8.7, a couple big projects locally here. Matilda Dam, $80 million to remove the dam. Everyone here is probably familiar with that ongoing saga. I feel it's been roughly 20 years. I think I was a kid when I first heard of that. And then the second one was the restoration of the Santa Clara River. So this is just cleaning up the riverbed and removing contaminants here and there. There's a whole project scope for what that $10 million covers, but as you can see there, $90 million directly coming back to Ventura County. In addition to this $90 million, there are other forms of help that are generally going to be applicable throughout the state. Desalination and Sigma help, which we will need some help with Sigma. That's available for anyone that applies as part of this $8.7 billion package. It's also supported by several other agencies out there, Aqua, California Special Districts, Southern California Water Coalition, and then local agencies include Callejas, Casitas, Upper Ventura, GSA, and the California Farm Bureau. So just to summarize those 5 pieces of legislation, the first one, already signed, conservation as a way of life. I wish it would have said efficiency as a way of life. That would have been more accurate. Second one, Proposition 68, already been decided by voters. The third one is the water tax. We're asking that this board take an oppose stance unless amended. Fourth one is the discontinuation of residential water service. If those of us on the board who appreciate local control, the staff recommendation is to oppose unless amended. And then the 2018 water bond we can support. It's up to individual voters on election day to decide that one. However, this board is clearly able to take a position if they will. In fact, the organizers of that campaign are asking that local agencies do take a position if they so wish. So with that, staff is able to take any questions, and our recommendation is to draft and send position letters to the appropriate state agencies.
Yes, sir.
I have one question. When I hear terms like protected class, there's some constitutional rights that apply to protected classes. Who determines who's a protected class?
I think that was one of the primary issues with that piece of legislation. In fact, I could not have said it better than Camarosa Water District when they were, I'm trying to flip to the right slide here, excuse me. Yeah, here we go, the discontinuation of water service. Camarosa Water District drafted an opposition letter, and that was one of the key questions that they asked is, well, who's making that determination? And what it came down to is that there was so much ambiguity in that bill. That bill didn't define or didn't assign that task to any specific party. And if usually when they don't specifically state who gets to do something, it falls on the agency to do that task. So I agree with you, Director Fig.
No, I just, that's a value-laden term. And in court cases I've been involved in, it's a constitutional term. And so are we now broadening the term, to say that a protected class is somebody other than race, religion, and the like?
I don't know if that
that term to me just was a red flag of, well, who's making that call?
Yeah, I don't know if the definition of protected class expands beyond. I think what they were trying to aim for here in this bill were people that were hovering around the poverty line.
Well, I don't look at that as a protected class. That's a class that's in need of assistance. All right, well, that was a point of contention and why others have stepped forward and opposed this particular piece of legislation. Is that right?
The ambiguity that you identified is one of the main reasons, yeah.
Well, I'm in agreement with your recommendation.
I just have one observation that however you want to define a protected class, it happens to be growing in this country. And we've got a real issue with that. We have to come to deal with it, not with this tax.
Yeah. But it's a constitutional issue. When we talk about a protected class, legislation as well as determinations by the Supreme Court have really clarified what a protected class is. So when I hear that term, I don't want to see us broaden beyond what the courts have already established and what our Constitution says.
Yeah, I don't.
And I'm not asking you to respond. It's really more of, well, this broadening has to occur through the Constitution and through the courts, not through legislation.
Sure. I think it's also worth noting that there's another bill it's actually been approved already by the state legislature about low-income rate assistance for ratepayers and public water agencies. And, you can make the connection here that right now only privately owned utilities are able to offer low-income rate assistance because Prop 218 does not apply to them. The state legislature is trying to figure out a way how we can offer low-income rate assistance for ratepayers of public agencies, right? You can make the argument that if there was a low-income rate assistance program, that you may see less discontinuation of water services. So those two things kind of go hand in hand, but that first bill hasn't really made its way to fruition yet.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. C, was it C? No, you had B and C. It was D, the update on strategic planning. And
So if I could, though, for that one, we'd authorize staff to draft and send position letters. So I would move to approve that we do that.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. 5-0. Okay. The update on strategic planning, who is going to be presenting that, sir?
So once again, be Mr. Alican.
I'll keep this one quick. At last month's meeting, Director Fig asked for an update on this particular item. In the last few weeks, we've asked the consultant to prepare a scope for us. They just delivered that scope in a few days ago. Mr. Villafana, Mr. Butler, and myself are going to review that together at our next operations meeting, which is scheduled for the first Tuesday of July. So when we have that opportunity, we're going to review that scope and make any adjustments that we need to. If we need to adjust the scope and fee, we'll do that with the consultant and come back for approval, hopefully at the next PHWA meeting.
And that's it? Thank you. Board member reports? No? Bill? No, Robert, sorry. Mr. Fig? Okay. No, none. Okay, and new business to be agendized. If I'm not mistaken, the last meeting we had, Bob, you had mentioned something about you wanted to have what the beach percentage of water was coming in from Phwa, what we were accepting.
Well, I think the action item is to come up with an itemized bill showing the percentage of state water project water, which is 3 times as expensive as groundwater. What percentage of that we Channel Islands was actually paying for versus, actual groundwater. And I think the question probably went a little bit beyond that, in that there has to be a way of knowing how it's being mixed and how it's being metered and how it's being distributed.
Well, I know that you asked for it to be put on the agenda, and I haven't seen anything that would be close to that, so we have it on the agenda next month?
Yeah, I know that we did speak about this briefly after the last meeting, and I think that there's a little bit additional research that has to be done before we are ready to present that, but we will definitely shoot for the July 16th, which is your next regular board meeting.
Right. We've been going along this way for a long time, so nobody's hair's on fire on this one. It was just an observation.
Sure. Yeah, no, we'll, Mr. Alican and I will work together on that and get you the best response that we can by that July 16th meeting.
Being a ratepayer, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and Director Nash, just to piggyback on Mr. Butler's response, this issue is going to be, just to set expectations, it's a longer issue. It's not something we're going to be able to solve before next board meeting. But I think what we can offer you is at least a game plan to provide more information on the water supply mix that each agency is receiving from the PHWA facility. One of the things that's going to be proposed on the next budget for PHWA is a condition assessment of the plant. And I think if that's approved and when it's completed, it's going to shed some light on the kinds of things that we can focus our efforts and our funds towards to help address issues like the one you just identified.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And one of the things is I didn't want to leave us with the inference that the Navy was taking undue quantity. They didn't ask for any special or preferential treatment, nor were they given any that we know of. It's just how they operate.
Going a little backwards, the Executive Director, do you have any reports or comments you'd like to give to us?
Yeah, just one quick one. I wanted to update the board on the status of the permanent replacement for Steve Hickox, who retired on April 30th, former city water operations manager, then became deputy director, but a portion of his salary was paid for by the agency in relation to the duties that he provided for the agency. So we are in the middle of a recruitment process now. We've decided to work with Avery Associates. Bill Avery, some of you may have heard of, is a longtime public sector executive recruiter. We think that that's justified in this case because of the special needs of this position, the technical knowledge, and hopefully someone who has some regional knowledge of water issues in, if not Ventura County specifically, then the Central Coast in general. Right now, the game plan would be to have that position and that recruitment completed no later than mid-October. If we can make it happen by September, that's even better. But we will keep you posted on that as we go forward. Like a lot of other positions right now with the job market strong and people having a lot of opportunities out there, it may be a little bit of a challenge, but we're going to, turn Mr. Avery loose on it, and Don and I will also reach out to people that we know and connections we have in the city management world or the water agency world and see if we can get a good crop of candidates for it. But again, right now we're targeting no later than the end of October, and hopefully a little sooner than that, to have that person here on a permanent basis.
Thank you. And the Assistant Executive Director, report or comment?
No comment, thank you.
No comment. What new business needs to be agendized? Anyone? Nada? Well, at that point, then, at 4:41, we're adjourned. Go.